Welcome to Darby and Friends, 1490 WGCH and WGCH.com, anywhere. Well, this is pretty exciting. This afternoon, I have a writer and producer by the name of Laura Stuart visiting with me, and this is a new friend. So welcome, Laura.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Well, it's so nice to have you. Now, you are a Greenwich resident, right?
I am.
That's so fun. And you are doing the New Play Forum in Stamford tonight.
Well, the New Play Forum is a new works theater company that is going to launch this fall at the Palace Theater, the Stamford Center for the Arts Palace Theater.
Lovely.
Upstage space with a season of 2 readings and 3 really bare bones, what we call lab productions of new plays and musicals. So what we're doing tonight is an event to help spread the word about it.
So that's fun and fundraising.
That's right.
Okay, now I get it. I was trying to put the whole thing together, and that's really exciting. So that's a beautiful space there in Stamford.
It is, and the New Play Forum grew up somewhat organically out of a conversation with Mike Moran, the executive director for the Stamford Center for the Arts. They were interested in a reading series, and this is what came out of it.
Neat. Well, now, who does the reading? Are these professional actors and actresses? Are they people who do it as some sort of enjoyment? That's kind of when I think of readings where my head goes. And I notice you have Frank Mastrone on your special guest performers, and I know he has a career, but he also is very active in the arts. So that's kind of an interesting approach, which is so nice that people have that opportunity to use all their gifts and talents.
Yeah, Frank has been in a number of Broadway shows.
Yes.
He's just a fantastic talent. If you know him,
Yes,
you probably know his voice.
Oh, glorious.
So we're thrilled to have him coming as a special guest tonight for a couple of songs. We have another Broadway veteran, Guy Fort, who actually some people in Greenwich know because he's talking about other careers. He's, as well as having appeared on Broadway in The Color Purple for 3 years, he's a retired Greenwich firefighter.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. Isn't it amazing? You sit down with someone and you're given one set of information, and then suddenly it's like a special garden starts to grow, and you find out all these other wonderful things about them. So I'm interested. You said you're a writer and a producer. So give us an insight into you, Laura.
I came to the theater by way of writing musicals.
Oh, wow.
And that's probably my primary interest. I've produced shows, been involved in some other things, but that's what's closest to my heart. For the New Play Forum, my role is the artistic director, and that fits very closely as a writer because it's working with new plays and musicals that are just getting developed and moving from the reading stage, if you will, which is where we have actors, and they might be equity actors from up here or in the city, but actors reading from the script, not performing the piece, but reading, and if it's a musical, also singing, so that they'll be able to present it to the audience. The audience will get a sense and be able to give some feedback if anything was confusing or if they really liked something. So that's a very helpful stage for new work. And then often works get kind of stuck at that level, and they go through reading after reading after reading.
With changes?
Actually, that's kind of interesting because to a certain degree, readings are helpful. Then when pieces get stuck in too many rounds of readings,
yes,
there's as one Broadway composer described it. Every little nail of originality kind of gets pounded down after too many sort of feedbacks, and it gets kind of homogenized in a way.
Right.
So
it's not the words of the writer anymore because it's had too much feedback.
Yeah, you lose the special the special voice and sort of the interesting parts of the person to put into the story. So so there's a right level of having readings to get that feedback, and then you could go on too long. So that's where our lab productions come in, because that's taking it up to the next step, just short of a full production.
So they move?
So they move. They're on a stage. They move, and but they don't have the full set and costumes, and it wouldn't be a whole orchestra, and it's in a smaller space because it's still in development. Still, we're looking for some feedback from the audience, just working, kind of getting the right nailed down, if you will.
Right. Are there big changes that people expect in going from when the writer presents the first script for reading to the point when it actually is a performance? I mean, does it change dramatically, significantly?
It can. A lot of pieces when they're opening on Broadway, sometimes you probably know, sometimes they might get sort of held up in previews a little longer because they're still making some changes. Now, Spider-Man was, for example, famous for that, but most pieces are really together by the time they get to that stage. But as you go through the and also, I mean, historically, I mean, if you think back of the old sort of Rodgers and Hammerstein and the traditional out of town tryouts, there'd be a lot of song that was added in Boston, song that was taken out in New Haven. Right.
I always think of Connecticut as being a real place of thrashing around to clean up a play before it goes to Broadway. Or is that an old myth?
It's less than it used to be, but there are a couple of very good regional theaters in Connecticut, that the Westport Country Playhouse, the Long Wharf in New Haven, that do still play a role in terms of pieces moving from there to Broadway. There's more often now. It's a spread of regional theaters across the country, and that's actually an innovation of maybe 20 years. They partner now with nonprofit regional theaters who can guarantee a season, say 4 weeks of, a full audience with eyeballs that people can, get that feedback from.
And so in a regional nonprofit theater, they expect the audience to give feedback?
Well, I mean, in a regular full production, it would be more seeing the audience reaction.
Oh, okay. But they're not writing.
They're not writing. No,
okay.
Back when we're at the reading stage, then often it is a matter of did you have anything that was unclear or something, and so it's more common to ask the audience member. So it's a very you're part of developing a new work. That's right, and we're taking it a step further because. We also think there's a real space in our community for this kind of new work being developed. So we're having a reception, just very similar to what we're doing tonight at our little celebration to spread the word. But we're having a reception with each performance through our season starting in the fall, so that there'll be more. Interaction.
You get to meet the actors, get to meet the director, etc. Everyone, I'm thinking that there's probably a fairly robust community of people that are interested in live theater in this area. Both, if you think in terms of all the surrounding towns to Stamford. Stamford is a big draw culturally, I would say, and it should be.
It's a very, I think of it as a very sophisticated theater audience. Most people up here go into Broadway. They're familiar with all of that, and so they're if you will, they're good consumers of theater.
Yes,
but there are also a number who are interested in, or maybe they've participated on some level, or they may have had have a kid through school, or moving on professionally to some level. So there's a good base of people here who I think have a real interest and love for theater on the, if you will, on the consumer side as audience members.
Yes.
And then also on the sort of behind the scenes more in terms of producing. And we're kind of doing a little merge between the two.
That's wonderful. How did this, was it something you had as a vision 10 years ago and it's finally come to fruition, or someone came to you and said, Laura, what would you think about hanging out with us and doing this?
Well, actually, somebody did come like that, but related and a little bit to the side.
Okay.
I had happened about a year and a half ago, within a couple of weeks, in Stamford at 2 different events, to have conversations with 2 different women who were expressing an interest in trying out writing sketch comedy in a traditional sketch comedy room with a group of writers. One of them...
Just for fun?
Well, one of them and her husband do some stand-up comedy, and the other one has some writing interests on the other side. But so they were interested in that. So I thought, well, it would be interesting, maybe, let's see if we can bring them together and what would come of that. And once we did... then the question was, well, where would this be performed? That's how I got in conversation with Mike Moran, and again, there being almost a sort of a cultural hole in the offerings up here.
Sure.
For this kind of new plays and getting involved in that level, which is pretty common in the city. Lots of people are in the city and they've seen, they've been to readings.
Downtown.
Exactly. The off Broadway.
Yes,
whatever.
Love it. Yes, most definitely. That's really fascinating. There's a term, bashart, which means that when things just happen, oftentimes it's used with romance, but just it's serendipitous. Here you are talking to these 2 individual people, and suddenly there's an idea that is sparkling and carrying on, and suddenly magic happens. And look where you are in a short, relatively, when you think about how ideas come to fruition.
That's right. It seems like in life, some things are easy and some are hard.
Yes, and when they're easy, you should just go with it. Absolutely. It rolls. All right. This is so much fun, Laura. I'm talking with Laura Stuart. She is with us today, joining us as they are celebrating the launch of the new Play Forum. It's going to be this evening, April 30th at 6:30 to 8:30. And it is going to have food from local restaurants and wine, and it's going to be a special time with special guests, Broadway performers, including Guy Fort and Frank Mastrone. And this is at the upstage at the Palace, Stamford Center for the Arts, and that's tonight. And you can get tickets in advance. You just go online at newplayforum.org, or at the door you can also get tickets. All right, we're going to go to a quick break, and then we'll be back with Darby and Friends, 1490 WGCH and WGCH.com, anywhere. Welcome back to Darby and Friends, 1490 WGCH and WGCH.com, anywhere. I'm having so much fun talking to Laura Stuart, who is with us today. She's really been giving me a great insight into the world of live theater and the process to get a play from the mind of the author all the way up through production. And tonight, why don't you describe what's going to happen at the new Play Forum?
Sure. Our celebration tonight will be in the upstage space at the Stamford Center for the Arts Palace Theater in Stamford, and it goes from 6:30 to 8:30. We will have wine very kindly provided from our Greenwich wine purveyor, Val's Putnam Wine and Liquors, and also we have sampling of food from some local Stamford restaurants, including Latin fusion from Cilantro, Indian from Coromandel, Australian from Flinders Lane. So there'll be some food and some drink, and then just a very short little segment of performances from along with our Broadway vets Guy Fort and Frank Mastrone. We have Denise Michelle Johnson, an equity actress who's very talented, and they are together going to sing a couple of or a few Broadway songs, plus give a little sneak peek preview of the new musical Samson that we will be doing a lab production of in our regular season this year. And so we have 2 songs that will be performed from that as well.
Now, when you said that you are a writer and a producer, and you mentioned in the previous segment that you write musicals, does that mean you write the words to the musicals, or do you write music and the words, the whole ball of wax?
I do, which is a little maybe less common than the most common. Most common way is to have a pair of writers, one who does the book and the lyrics, and the other one who composes the music. But they're different mixes of, they might work together on the lyrics or whatever. Sometimes you have 3, one doing each of those 3, and sometimes you have one doing them all. And for me, that's the case. I write and
so you read music and you write music and you write the words and you write the story. Are your stories, are your book? Is that what you called it? The book? Are they 21st century? Are they throwbacks to another time? Are they futuristic? Give us a sense of what you write.
For me, I so far, I should say, I have tended to do a little bit more of the, if you will, the classical musical theater, which is taking people to, once upon a time, basically out of the current day and the current environment. And so, for example, for Samson, which is really where I got involved, because that's my piece. It's based in the biblical story and original time and place. But
it's a long time ago.
That's a long time ago, but we make it very current. We've got some.
Okay, that was what I was wondering.
Music feel, and we've got real depth of characters, and there's a fresh interpretation, because most people don't realize, but by the biblical text and the history and the geography of the story, Delilah is never named as a Philistine. For hundreds of years, she's been shown as the sort of the James Bond girl sent over to do him in.
Yes,
but that's not what we have historically to build from. So by having her as a third group, which is basically more of the sort of just the local people, one of the local Canaanites, if you will, it's a fresh interpretation, and it kind of turns it not upside down, but definitely a different side.
That's fun. And are you someone who is, I won't go as far to ask you if you're a biblical scholar, but are you a reader of the Bible?
Answer.
That's different.
I'm not a biblical scholar. I have actually consulted with a couple. I've been interested to see, in readings we've done, like we did one out in the middle of Pennsylvania, kind of different audiences to see their reaction to it. But I was really drawn by well, first of all, it's a very modern story. I mean, it's he's flawed, but it's the classic super flawed superhero. One of the theories is the name Samson is derived from son of the sun, and it's essentially a retelling of the Apollo sun god story, where
interesting.
The best son of the tribe has to be sacrificed to save the tribe.
So, and that becomes a Judeo-Christian whole motif also.
So by that's another reason that bringing in Delilah as a Canaanite kind of gives a chance to show it on from different angles. Right,
and then that sense of the betrayal of a man by a woman. Women get cast in some really nasty roles.
Well, we take a slightly different look at that too.
Oh, good! It's actually, I'm glad to hear that.
well, I mean, if you really look through the story,
yes,
Samson is, and it's understandable in each case, but he's betrayed several times over. His tribe is looking for what he's going to do for them.
Right.
He first has what's supposed to be a Philistine bride, but she gets out of him the secret to the riddle, because her tribe, the Philistines, are pressing down on her. And then, he's gone and he's disappeared, and he gets, his tribe turns him in, and there's all kinds of things. So ultimately, it's not until, and he lies several times to Delilah before he tells her the truth. When he finally tells her the truth, that's where everything happens, where he finally is able to save the tribe. The cost is high, but that's
his life?
His life, his sight.
Yeah. That's big sacrifice. Yeah. You think about the messaging from that long ago to cultures and civilizations and tribal beliefs in terms of...
But resonates with people, or people
right
will be
now,
so familiar with it.
I mean, what was it? I guess recently the James Comey town hall with Anderson Cooper. And he was talking, not specifically biblically, but he was talking a lot about living at a higher level of ethical behavior. And I thought, that's been talked about for centuries and centuries. What is that ethical behavior that lifts us, maybe at great sacrifice, but lifts us out of the morass of me, I.
Yeah, and it's so tricky too, because so often those who talk the most about it are the ones who have the biggest issues.
Yes, are the most flawed.
That's right. That's right. It's a really, and and the story is it's both is in all of us.
Yes,
and that's what we hope in theaters. Yes. You hit that universal. People can recognize
that's it. The universal, I think, is what makes any art form interesting. It's got to have a universal message, or I don't think it can last the ages.
That's right. I mean, there's the specific on top.
Yes.
But if it's not, then it doesn't really show human nature.
Right.
And if it doesn't show human nature, then what kind of a story?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So what type of music goes with this? Are they up? Are they down? What's the feel?
We've got a pretty good mix.
Okay.
We've got some ballads, very upbeat, some that you might think, would be troubled. It kind of sounds a little joyous. It's part of that also, the looking at the two sides and the feel and trying to surprise a little.
That's excellent. And will you set it in modern, you said the lab productions, they don't wear costumes.
Yeah.
Okay.
At this point, we're envisioning that it will be, to some, maybe stylized, but still set in the original time and place, but make the characters as real and as today in terms of the depth and their relationships.
I think it's interesting. All art forms are adapting ancient themes and stories, but putting them in more modern context.
Yeah. That's a very, very common.
Yes.
Very common.
Well, I think that's part of engaging younger audiences, because a lot of younger people are so accustomed to things that they can see on their devices, and they're imprinted all the time. Growing up, maybe you watch TV a little bit, but not so much. And to go to theater was like, wow, was something that was so unusual. But now, every day, they can watch a myriad of stories and things. So you have to really find that way to say, this.
Yeah. Two thoughts on that. One is that I do think the more electronic our lives, and in some ways the more isolated in terms of looking at a screen, the more resonance there is in coming together as a community and experiencing the live. That's right, and the shared emotion and all of that sort of thing. Yeah. And that's part of, again, we're having the receptionists to try and expand that even a little more. The other thing in terms of the question as to how to make it relatable, I think that's part of where the music comes in, because it's probably about a little less than half of the songs have some crossover pop potential.
Right.
So our vision is that as the show, and this is getting a little away from the new play form, other than we'll do a lab production of the show as part of our season. But as the show progresses, our plan is to have essentially a compilation pop crossover album done of those songs.
Oh, wonderful!
Because that's historically Broadway had that in terms of the. And you see, like, for example, with the success of Hamilton.
Oh, yes.
If you can bring in sort of current music and hit the current ears.
Yes.
And have even have the rhymes have the complexity that work for current ears.
So people remember.
Yeah.
The rhyme, they were all brought up on Electric Company and Sesame Street, which is all rhyme.
Very right. So
fascinating.
So I think there are ways to be current for
Yes.
across generations.
Yes, that's excellent. How long have you been doing this? A lifetime?
No. Well, I had I've had another career, and when I still lived in Boston, I sent myself off to grad school. I got an MFA in creative writing at Emerson College.
Lovely.
And ended up actually taking more classes at the Berklee College of Music, and that's where a lot of my background came from.
That's fantastic. Well, let's one more time tell us where to go tonight and what time.
Absolutely. We'd love to see you all tonight. It's at the Upstage at the Stamford Center for the Arts Palace Theater in Stamford. You can go on to our website, newplayforum.org, for tickets in advance, or you can also get them at the door.
Wonderful. Well, Laura Stuart, it has been such a delight talking to you, and I'll look forward to seeing you tonight at the Palace Theater. You've been listening to Darby and Friends, 1490 WGCH and WGCH.com, anywhere.